Meeting the Umatilla Board of Commissioners to order, and our pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. I am going to make one introductory comment. If I can get Cindy to stand up and hold out the new Umatilla County flag. This is the first flag Umatilla County has that's been approved by the Board of Commissioners ever. So that you'll start seeing that flag. And I think thank you to Jennifer and to the whole branding and logo team that came up with that. And I really like how that flag turned out. So anyway, that's the unveiling of the vein. Thank you, Cindy. I would like to remind everyone that this is a public meeting, and if you are here to speak on anything that is not on the agenda today, now's the time that you would come up and make your comments. Any comments? Alrighty, thank you. Awards, recognition, and correspondence. Commissioner Schaefer?
None for me.
Commissioner Timmons?
No.
Approval of the minutes from January 4th, 2023.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of January 4th, 2023. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Any additions, changes to the agenda?
Let's see Doug speaking up.
No?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. Let's go into the, any public comment. I already called for it once, call for it again. Go into the agenda for today. I'd like to welcome the Vale District Manager, Wayne Munger, and he's going to give us an update from the Bureau of Land Management. And with him is also Sandy Tennyson, so I welcome both.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We're going to just present our quarterly report, and you should have gotten it via email, but I brought a couple copies if I can approach.
Sure.
Thank you.
And so I'll go ahead and let Sandy is our Assistant Field Manager for the Baker Field Office. And Joe apologizes, he's the field manager up in the Baker Field Office. He apologizes that he wasn't able to attend. He had a couple of prior engagements, but Sandy will go ahead and report out for the Baker Field Office, and the rest of it in the report just covers what's going on in the southern part of the district. And so if you have any questions about Malheur or the Malheur Field Office or anything we have going on down there, please let me know. Go ahead, Sandy.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. The biggest project we have that we're working on currently is the South Fork of the Walla ACEC management plan revision. And that's in the environmental assessment process or in the NEPA process currently. We had two public open house meetings back in November, one in Walla and one in Milton Freewater. And we had we were very overwhelmed with the turnout, about 90 people over those 2 days. So it was a great turnout. We got lots of great comments. We got about 81 comments in total. The comment period ended at the end of November. And we also got lots of letters from the county and from the Forest Service, Umatilla National Forest, and also the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation as well, and the Walla Basin Watershed Council, Blue Ribbon Coalition, and the Oregon Wild. So we had lots of representation and lots of comments and some great feedback that as we're moving forward with the process, identifying these things that we're going to analyze and as we move forward with the NEPA process. So I'm very excited to have that public input on this process. So we're
Before I ask for comments, I
Yeah.
do want to let everybody know that I had a great meal with Sandy and Wayne last night. We went over a lot of different subjects, including the NEPA process for the South Fork of the Walla, and discussed participating as cooperating agency. And I told them that that's something that the commissioners will discuss, but it's something that we would lean toward without making a commitment right now, but being a cooperating for that. We also talked about a couple of other things, including land issues, trail issues, what else? We covered a lot.
Law enforcement contracts.
Law enforcement contract,
Yes.
and some of the reasons why some of that hasn't come through yet. Law enforcement they're in the middle of their budget process and some of the restrictions on that. But I'm gonna go ahead and, I had my conversation, so.
Yeah.
Johnson,
I don't have any comment or questions. I appreciate the report.
Thank you.
I am sure I will have questions
No worries,
after I
yeah.
read your report, so.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I have your numbers, so thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Dan, one thing that I didn't bring up last night was our law enforcement staffing, current staffing capacity. As you know, we have one law enforcement ranger that covers 5.1 million acres, all the way down from Nevada border up to just over into the Washington area and all along Idaho. She's very busy. We have excuse me, a vacant position that we've tried to advertise for 2 years now, and we haven't had very much luck.
none of you guys get to apply.
Oh,
Right?
no.
One thing we are trying to do, and the position closed in December, so between the three districts, Lakeview, Burns, and Vale, we decided to upgrade the position and make it a zoned chief ranger, meaning a GS-12 supervisory position that would kind of oversee all the rangers are underneath for those three districts. We're hoping to get the list of applicants any day now and see how that comes out. In that kind of negotiation with the state, I made sure that if we use our allocated box, we'll call it, that we would get a backfill. So regardless of where that position sits in one of the districts, we would get our box back so we can advertise and hopefully get another on-the-ground ranger as well. So hopefully we can get a little more capacity, and with that being a zone position, we can kind of overlap between the districts, and so if Burns isn't busy and you're seeing issues up here, we can borrow some of those rangers and kind of shed the boundaries, as it were. So
Stephanie does a great job.
She does.
For those in the audience, the big issue in Umatilla County, I'm not talking about the other areas,
Yeah.
but in Umatilla County, BLM has a lot of acres, but it's all patchwork
Yeah.
throughout the county, all the way from the dam area to even portions up here by the airport. There's it's just a patchwork, in that law enforcement and enforcement and monitoring is tough to do. You just don't come into one area, cover it, and be done. It's tough. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah.
That would be good news.
okay. Did you want to cover anything else?
Unless you had any other questions, that's our biggest project on the county right now.
Perfect.
Other than keep, we do have staff as, not only Stephanie, our law enforcement, but our recreation specialists and staff do get up here as often as possible to check on Echo Meadows and some of these other smaller parcels, Joy Lane and Sagebrush areas. So we do check on it as much as we can. We're trying to keep an eye on the conditions in those sites and making sure that they're safe and enjoyable for the residents to use, especially for ATV usage as well, for those two parcels. So
Perfect. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time.
thank you.
Thank you for coming over. Next on the agenda is the Walla Basin Watershed Council.
Yes, good morning. This is Troy Baker from the Watershed Council. And good
Okay.
morning, Commissioners.
Good morning, Troy.
And thank you for providing me this opportunity to share our 2022 accomplishments. And I also appreciate the ability to do it remotely.
Can everybody hear all right?
A little louder.
A little louder?
We'll see if we can turn it up on ours.
Yeah, I don't have your mouse.
Probably on the
How
other
is that?
screen, Dan.
Is that better?
You're probably not gonna be able to see it, it's probably on the other screen.
Oh, gotcha. All righty.
Great, thank you. We can go ahead and advance to the next slide. So over the past 28 years, the Watershed Council has completed all projects all over the Walla Walla Basin. Those projects range from upriver habitat projects, and those would be in the yellow dots up on the map. Irrigation efficiency projects and the green areas. Some basin trend and surface monitoring, and also managed aquifer recharge. And those recharge projects are the orange points up on the map there. And we also finally we assisted in numerous piping projects, and you can see the red highlighted ditches there. Those are all areas that we've assisted in piping throughout the years. Next slide. So in 2022, the Watershed Council, in cooperation with the Hudson Bay District Irrigation Company and the Walla Walla River Irrigation District, recharged over 6,000 acre feet of water into the shallow aquifer. This is the shallow gravel aquifer in our basin. So with the addition of the totals from 2022, to date, the Watershed Council has recharged over 98,000 acre feet of water into the ground. That total is equivalent to covering the Walla Walla Valley in over 1 foot of water. The graph on the right side is showing the increasing trend of how much water the council has recharged since its start back in the early 2000s. The purpose of this project is to mitigate for efficiency projects and also for the beneficial use of all stakeholders in our basin. Next slide. So we're able to measure those impacts of the recharge program and also the irrigation efficiency projects along with stream restoration projects by monitoring the groundwater across the valley. Last year, the council continued to measure over 60 wells, and the groundwater levels are showing a positive impact around the recharge sites and down gradient of those sites. But we do still have areas of concern. The east side of the main stem and areas south of the town of Touchy in Oregon are showing significant groundwater declines. And I put a hydrograph up there on that slide, and you can see the declines of that well. That's one of our wells that we monitor south of the town of Touchy. Next slide. Just as we monitor the gravel aquifer through our groundwater well monitoring, we monitor streams, rivers, and creeks in our basin. The monitoring sites provided valuable trend data that's combined with the state, federal monitoring sites. We really can present a full picture of what's happening with the streams in our basin. Last year, we monitored over 20 surface sites. And we do have all of our monitoring data available for all the stakeholders in our basin on our website. Next slide. So over the past 5 years, the council has completed multiple projects on Cows Creek. Cows Creek, for those of you that don't know where it's located, it's located just above the town of Milton Freewater, and it's a tributary of the Walla Walla River. Last year, we removed the final remaining passage barrier on the creek, and the photo up on the left was that concrete barrier that we removed. And the photo on the right is the stream conditions above that barrier in the upper part of Cows Creek. So now Steelhead and Bull Trout can access that upper part of the system. Next slide. So by removing that passage barrier, fish have access to an additional 10 miles of habitat. The project also added complexity to the stream bed. And then we're in the process of planting willows. We planted some last fall, and we'll return this spring and plant some additional trees then. So when completed, the added trees will provide additional shade to the creek, which should increase water quality through cooling the water temperatures. Okay, next slide. So just above that passage project, we completed the designs of an additional habitat restoration project last year, and we're planning to move to construction this summer. The desired outcome of this project is to increase riparian habitat, increase in groundwater through connecting the floodplain back to the creek, and then also increases in water quality through lower water temperatures and fish habitat as well. So next slide. So in 2022, the council completed a 2-year habitat assessment that focused on the upper main stem, the South Fork, and the North Fork of the Walla River. The important aspect of this project is it was completed post 2020 floods. So now we have an updated data set of information that's guiding us to future projects. Next slide. So one of the projects identified from that habitat assessment is a large restoration project on the North Fork. So on the left-hand side of the slide, you'll see a couple of aerial photos. And those are both areas that are within inside our project boundary. And the upper photo was taken post-flood, while the lower photo was taken before the flood. I know many of you have probably seen other photos like this. But we noticed extreme increases in water temperature post-flood, and then also a loss of riparian habitat due to the flooding. So the photo on the right is just like Cows Creek, is taken in the upper watershed above the heavily impacted areas by the flood. Now our project, the North Fork project, will ensure connection from the main stem through that highly disturbed area from the flood all the way up to those upper reaches of the North Fork. And this project is focused on making sure that the steelhead and bull trout have a route and a way to get to that upper part of the system. Next slide. So last year we moved to designs for our first phase of that big project, and we're currently in between the 80% completion level and the 100% completion level. And we plan to be completed with the designs this winter so that we're able to move to construction this summer. So what we hope to do is restore the channel to proper form, restore the river processes, and also the floodplain function while ensuring the landowner infrastructure is protected as well. So this is a multi-purpose project that we're focusing on the North Fork. Next slide. So how do you determine success of a project like that? One of the ways is an effectiveness monitoring project. So we have an extensive monitoring project that we started prior to implementation, and we'll continue to work on through post-implementation of this project. This effectiveness monitoring, we actually got out and did do some work of the monitoring last year, and it will end in 2024, but we'll be able to return in 10 to 15 years to measure that long-term success of the project. Next slide. So since 2005, the council's also continued to work with the local ag community to collect water samples during periods of applications of herbicides, fungicides, and pesticides. The stewardship or pesticide stewardship project is a voluntary, non-regulatory project that provides data to users to ensure chemicals aren't being entered into the streams, rivers, ditches, and creek in our basin. This is one of our projects that's been very successful from the start. Next slide. So I added a couple of graphs from two of the chemicals that we tested our water samples for. One is diuron. It's used to control weeds along roadways, and in the past it's been used by irrigation districts. And then chlorpyrifos, which is also the common term is lorsban. So in the past, both chemicals have been found at higher levels, and our ag community has responded very positively from the data by taking voluntary action to reduce future detections. Last year, we didn't find either chemical in the water quality sampling that was conducted. This project is a great example of what can be done locally through voluntary action instead of regulatory action. Next slide. So as most of you probably know, there's a large planning activity occurring in the Walla Walla Basin. It's called the Walla Walla Water 2050 Strategic Plan. And it's really a plan that's focused on all stakeholders in the basin. We're currently transitioning from the development of the 30-year strategic plan to implementing components of that large plan.
I think we're on the wrong slide. There we go.
I'm sorry. There we go.
Yeah, okay.
So one of the large components of the planning effort is focusing on the development of a large water project, and that's designed to satisfy the needs of the agricultural community, local stakeholders, while also ensuring there's enough water in stream for aquatic species as well. The Watershed Council is a key stakeholder group that provides a local voice to this large project process. While this planning effort is taking place, both states, Oregon and Washington, along with the USGS, are conducting a basin-wide hydrologic study. And that study is focusing on the surface and groundwater. So earlier I mentioned the surface and groundwater monitoring that we're doing. All of our data is also being taken into consideration and used in that large hydrologic study that's taking place. Once completed, that data will be used by the 2050 planning effort and planning and implementation. Next slide. So one of the ways the council's helping out and collecting data for that process is we're working on a complementary project in the Upper Basin that's focused on locating and characterizing the source water springs in the Upper Watershed. So over the last 3 years, the council's been locating, characterizing over 150 springs. The critical spring data will be used to understand the critical source water areas within the Upper Watershed, along with providing a spring database to be used for years to come. Next slide. So the council is working on a lot of different projects within the basin, but we also work with the local community, from classrooms in our local schools to providing stakeholder engagement opportunities for landowners through project tours. This year, the council is planning on offering monthly workshops held in the evening, specifically focused on our local community. Next slide. So we also participate in local events such as last month's holiday parade, and some of the pictures up on the slide are from our float that we entered. And we had one of our prior employees dressed up as a beaver, and then up in the upper right, another one of our employees dressed up as a fish, a salmon. And the next slide.
I'm throwing that salmon back in, by the way, if I catch it.
Very good. And as a local nonprofit organization, the Watershed Council is dependent on the support of the local community, along with local, county, state, and federal agencies. Again, thank you for this time to be able to present some of our accomplishments from last year. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Troy. Great presentation. Any questions, Commissioner Timmons?
Yes, Mr. Chairman Doran, I have a couple of questions. Troy, can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I was fortunate enough to sit in on a presentation that you gave at Rotary. And it was I believe pre-pandemic. Anyway, you had just received grant funding for the spring, you just talked about the 150 new springs that you had identified. And is that at the North Fork and the South Fork?
Yes, it is. It's the North Fork, South Fork, and then this year we're going to actually move into the Mill Creek drainage as well. So we'll cover the North Fork, South Fork, and Mill Creek.
Okay, and what amazed me was you not only had people going up the bottom, but they actually came across the top and came down in order to make sure that they had identified all of these new areas of water that you had no idea were there. And so it was very comprehensive, and I'd often wondered, you said that you had identified 150 new springs. And what are you gonna do now that you have that data with that?
I think this data is going to be used by many different, agencies, organizations. We're working in conjunction with the U.S. Forest Service and the USGS. We're collecting water samples that are going to be dated so we can have a better understanding of how old our water is. So how critical, the snowpack, if we see changes in the snowpack, what will happen, to our springs? Will we see a decrease in spring production? And also, I think the Forest Service uses this data when they do their planning to make sure that those springs are protected in outside areas that can be within their forest planning. So those are two different ways. And then also the spring database is available to everyone as well. So it's an open system that allows anyone to be able to use this information.
I thought it was interesting during the presentation, they did actually talk about the age of water. And you just assume that it's from the snowpack, and that's not the case. And I thought that was very interesting. Most people don't realize that. My other question is, where do you water your water samples? Where do you test those sites at?
Which of the sites out in the field that we're
you said you did water sample testing.
Correct.
Where do you test it at?
So we're testing a number of the wells because a lot of them haven't been tested before. And so we're working in partnership with USGS. Right now, we collect the samples at a number of those sites. So we're really trying to get a good broad sample. And then we send those samples on to USGS, and then they conduct all the age testing for the water.
I think you misunderstood, or I didn't say it clearly. I was talking more about the chemicals and pesticides that are in the water. Are you at the end of, say, Mud Creek and some of those areas, or where do you pick up that water?
Okay.
To test it? That's what I was asking.
We actually collected all across the valley up to state line. Right now we have 5 established sites from the town of Milton Freewater through the Little Walla system down to state line. So it's mainly, those areas. But in the past, we have tested elsewhere. We worked with the pea and wheat growers, and we tested Dry Creek and Pine Creek. And it's a success story there because we didn't find anything. We tested for multiple years. We didn't find anything. And so we discontinued our sampling effort there.
Well, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Troy. Any questions?
Yeah, I've got a quick question.
Sure.
On slide number 3, the aquifer recharge, how many CFS are you putting into the ground on that?
We have a limited license that would allow us to put up to 45 CFS in the ground. I think we typically average about 25. And that's through, we can start recharging about November 15th through May 15th at most of our sites. There's typically the month of February we're shut down because there's maintenance that occurs at the head gates on the Little Walla ditch.
Thank you.
Thanks, Troy. Thank you very much. Nice comprehensive presentation. I always enjoy those every year. Thank you, Troy.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the weed control products contract. I don't see Teddy or Tom. So this is a request. The county issued a request for proposals for the purchase of weed control products for 2023. 3 proposals were received. The requested action is to award the contract to the lowest proposal. Hear a motion?
Yeah, I move to approve contract with Nutrien for the purchase of weed control products for 2023.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the contract with Nutrien. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the access agreement for OWRD. I know that I don't see Tom on here. Maybe you want to take it, John?
Sure, very good. So previously, the Oregon Water Resources Department had come to talk to the board about monitoring wells at the Milton Free Water shop location. And they wanted to add a 4th well to the site at the Public Works facility for monitoring well. The department director is in support of the request, and there is adequate space to accommodate the wells. The matter is before us for approval. With that, I'd make a motion to approve it.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the OWRD's request for monitoring wells at the Milton Free Water ODOT or Milton Free Water Public Works facilities. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Computer purchase is the next item on the agenda. Riley.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning, Riley.
Riley Wortman, IT. We have 7 jail computers and 3 jail monitors that we're looking at replacing. The computers are $6,349. The monitors for all 3 is $1,197. And this is something we've been working on with the jail to cycle through a certain number of their computers every year to make sure we're keeping them up to date. So we're requesting the board approve the replacement of these computers for a total of $7,546.
Move approval.
Second.
Been a motion and a second to approve the purchase of computers and monitors for the total price of $7,546. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passed unanimous. Next item is vehicle leases. Josh? Like I explained to Josh, I tried to explain this, but it's all up to him now.
Morning, Commissioners. Josh Roberts, Umatilla County Sheriff's Office. Before you this morning is a request to enter into a lease agreement to purchase some new vehicles for the Sheriff's Office. Several of our vehicles are either aged or, unfortunately, last year we had a couple that were totaled in crashes. So the request is for 2 fully equipped Dodge Durango Pursuit vehicles. Those were the crashed vehicles. Additionally, we are asking for a Ford Expedition, which will be for our K9 program. Our current K9 vehicle is becoming high miles, and I was told even just this morning it's starting to face some mechanical issues. And so we're looking to replace that with something a little bit bigger and a little bit better for that program, and the Expedition will fit that need. We're also asking for 2 Toyota RAV4 vehicles. These will be for the Civil Division, and then 1 Toyota Sienna minivan for the jail. You'll notice that the vehicles for patrol are on a 4-year lease. The ones for civil and for the jail are on 2-year. That's because the jail and civil divisions historically put about twice as many miles per year as we do on patrol, and so they just get higher miles faster, and so we're putting those on a 2-year lease. So the total cost for the first 2 years is $120,078.85. And then after those first sets of vehicles are paid off, the remaining 2 years are just the patrol vehicles, so it'd be an additional $60,046 for the remaining 2 years. I want to thank, first off, the Commission for being supportive of our vehicle needs, especially since we've entered into this lease. And I thought it noteworthy to just point out that since we've entered into this vehicle lease, we've become more proficient at selling vehicles as well. And I checked this morning, and since we've started our first leases in 2020, we've brought in about $118,000 back into the program through the sale of vehicles, partnering with Bancorp. So I do appreciate you guys' support, and we ask for approval. And I will take questions if you have any.
I have a question.
Sure.
They're highly customized, is that right?
Some of them are. The patrol ones are highly customized. We have all of our police lights, our radios, our mobile data terminals installed, switches and all that stuff. The ones for the civil division and the jail are less. The jail does have some partitioning for prisoner transports, but primarily it's radio is all that gets installed in those. So it really depends on the vehicle, but the patrol ones for sure are highly customized, and the K9 one especially is very customized, yes.
I'm glad you asked that. On the transport vehicles, we approved the expenditure on those new restraint systems. Well, I didn't even ask this when you and I got, are they gonna be put into the transport vehicles?
That I don't know. I'd have to talk to the jail about that. They're standalone. They're not installed or integrated with the vehicle, so I haven't conferred with the jail as to whether or not they anticipate using those in the vehicle, but they certainly could be.
Okay, yeah. I was kind of curious even how that new system was working.
I think we've used it once
Okay.
already, and it was successful in that use. And so we are getting some use out of them. We haven't used them out on the road yet. I believe that was in the jail that they had a use on that, if I recall correctly. But since we've deployed them out in the vehicles, we just haven't had the opportunity, thank goodness, to use them. So,
Yeah, no kidding.
Comes from me, I'll take it.
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Thank you. Entertain a motion.
I move.
Second.
It's been a motion and second to approve the expenditure for the vehicle leases from the Sheriff's Department as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Sage Grouse MOU.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bob Walder, Community Development Director. So this matter before you is Memorandum of Understanding. The Bureau of Land Management is working on updates to their Greater Sage Grouse Resource Management Plan and EIS. And this MOU would provide Umatilla County cooperating agency status as they move through the NEPA planning process. The BLM recognizes that the county has some jurisdiction by law as well as local land use expertise that they would like to have at the table as they consider amendments to this plan. And so under this MOU, Commissioner Doran would serve as the county's primary representative, and then I would serve as the alternate on the as a cooperating agency. So legal counsel has reviewed the MOU and found it to be sufficient.
Questions? The only one I have is we had a discussion yesterday on the I might say the population, but the evidence of sage grouse in Umatilla County, and there is sage grouse in Umatilla County, like on the couple of different places. But we don't have a definitive population count, right?
I don't believe so. So we weren't included in the original area that was designated as critical habitat.
Which is a good.
Back in 2019, I believe, is when they developed their first resource management plan. So we will have to see what changes happen this time, but
I think that's
yeah,
very important. We have a voice.
yeah, we need to be at the table. So
Questions? Motion?
I move.
Oh, go ahead.
I move to approve the memorandum of understanding.
Second.
Been a motion and a second to approve the MOU cooperating agent memorandum of agreement. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Don't go anywhere. Next on the agenda is the Umatilla River Trail grant application.
Yeah, so you might recall back in November, we submitted a pre-application to Oregon Department of Transportation for the Oregon Community Pathways Grant Program. And what this program does is provides federal funding to off-system trail projects in the state. So by off-system, they mean not within county road right-of-way or city right-of-way. And so, as you know, we've been working on the Umatilla River Trail project for a couple years now in the concept planning, and we've now moved to the implementation phase. And so we've identified a project as phase 1, which would work to connect the cities of Umatilla and Hermiston, provide a pedestrian bicycle trail between Umatilla and Hermiston. So this first request is a $6 million grant request, and it does require a 10.27% match, and we have a committed local partner that's been identified to provide that match. And so there would be no, general fund dollars that would go towards this. So the application is required to be submitted to ODOT by January 31st, and so I'm seeking your approval of us to submit that grant application. I can answer any questions you might have about the project or the grant.
Questions?
I think it's a great project.
I just have one comment. I remember way back at the start of this, and Bob made the comment, this is gonna be I gotta make sure it's going to happen is that we're gonna make sure this committee does all of the legwork and the administration. This committee has been Bob and Megan for sure. They have done a lot on this project, along with the committee. It's been a very active, very, very active committee. And I just want to thank them for all the work that they have.
Yeah, we've also been working with our consultant, Merchant McIntyre, who has a really high success rate on receiving grant funding for trail projects specifically. And so we're pretty excited. We think we have a really good shot at this. And looking at the competing jurisdictions that have applied, we were one of 2 Eastern Oregon jurisdictions out of the whole state that applied for, I think, almost $32 million in total funds that are available. So we think we have a really solid shot here.
Wow, good. That's fantastic. Well, Mr. Chair, I move approval and authorize the Community Development Department to submit an application to the Oregon Community Pathways Program for funding for the Oregon River Trail Project and authorize Chair to sign the application.
Second.
Been a motion and a second to approve the grant application for the Umatilla River Trail Project. All those in favor?
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob. Next item on the agenda today is the ambulance service area plan update.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tom Roberts, Umatilla County Emergency Manager, and I brought with me this morning Chief Scott Stanton from Umatilla County Fire District 1 and the co-chair of the Ambulance Service Area Committee, and we're here to request approval of the update to the Ambulance Service Area Plan prior to the start of franchising. And if you have any questions, I've placed that in front of you in advance so you had a chance to read it. It's quite an extensive document, highlighted the changes that we're looking at. If you have any questions, then Chief Stanton can help answer some of those on behalf of the committee.
Got a couple little clarifications, so it's not really clarification, but changing it from 5 years to 10 years, that's a pretty big move.
Yeah, when we met in November, the Ambulance Service Area Advisory Committee, which has been in place longer than I've been in the service, I guess. With that, we looked at several things, and it's becoming the standard 10 years across the state. Deschutes County, Crook County, actually, if you go to Lane County, it's in perpetuity. Such as Eugene Springfield, they have it forever unless they want to give it up or they default on it. So that's at the far end of the spectrum of having it. The 2 things that we really talked about of all the people that were there and first was the stability of having it going from 5 to 10 years. That gives the opportunity to plan for personnel, emergency saving equipment such as cardiac monitors, auto pulses, and obviously the procurement of ambulances and those items, the rolling stock. It also helps us with, we're working towards a bariatric unit for the whole county, be placed in Pendleton. That stability with a tenure helps us with that as well. It's also about continuity of patient care, from the user of the patient or our constituents to the pre-hospital care providers, it's us, to the end user, end provider, which is the hospitals per se most times. So it adds to better care and better continuity for patients as well. So that was the big thing. The other really kind of change that might be significant in your eyes is the fact of the makeup of the group. And we want to make sure all providers are on there, all the AMS providers in the county that are on there for that. At the November meeting, we had a private life flight was there, hospitals were there, providers, as well as the fire QRT representatives were there. Unanimous decision of all the people at the committee meeting to provide this to you. So as far as our part, so.
Yeah, that was my second question, so. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for being here. Any other questions? Entertain a motion.
Thanks, Chief.
This is an ordinance, so you need to have a public hearing.
Public hearing, that's right. This is a public hearing. I'd like to open this public hearing up for any comments, either pro or con. Now would be the time to come to the podium and make those comments. Seeing and hearing none, online none. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and schedule this for, I believe it's February 23rd. The meeting on February
I think it's February 22nd.
February 22nd. So we'll revisit this item on February 22nd.
And if you could just have a motion to that effect,
So
that'd be
moved.
great.
A motion to move this to the meeting of February 22nd, the ASA plan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the BOPTA, the BOPTA appointment. This is the Bureau of Property Tax Appeals and Appointment.
Morning, Commissioners. Dan Lanai with Administrative Services, and it's for the Board of Property Tax Appeals. And Jerry Baker is no longer able to be on the board, and so we asked actually his son, James Baker, and he said yes, he would be willing, so we need to make a change because we originally adopted that Jerry Baker would be one of the board members. And now that's being changed to James Baker.
Entertain a motion?
I move to adopt order number BCC 2023-004.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt order number BCC 2023-004. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you, Commissioners.
On the agenda is sale of property.
This is coming before the board to approve the sale of a piece of property that was foreclosed on for delinquent property taxes. As provided by Oregon law, the record owner can repurchase the property for the amount of at least the amount of the taxes owing. And so what's before the board is a request to resell the property for an amount not less than $58,664.07 to the record owner.
So moved.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second to approve the authorization of the sale of foreclosed property. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the charter review. This is a motion or Doug, do you want to handle it? Or?
Sure. Back in September, the board initiated the required review for the Umatilla County Charter, and at that point requested that applications be available for people to apply to be appointed. That was posted on the Umatilla County website. A number of applications have been received. I believe there's 9 that were received, and there's a list of those people on the information for the board. And the matters before the board for further discussion. And one of the items you might want to consider is how long you would like the committee to meet and report back to the board.
I can, just from past experience, we actually, the board kind of left it up to the Charter Review Committee to establish those guidelines. One thing is that the commissioners aren't involved in those discussions and we don't participate in them. We could set a date, say 6 months from now, unless they finish their work earlier, that they come back with a report to us or something in that format, or ask them to submit a schedule to us. But again, from experience, I'm not sure they're gonna know what their schedule is.
I think 6 months is reasonable. That's a
Okay.
good starting point, so.
Okay.
Not as an end timeline, but just as an
Report,
update.
yeah.
Report.
Okay,
Yeah.
I agree.
Unless they request a meeting with us sooner.
Okay.
So, Doug, did you get that?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
We don't need a motion on that, do we, or do we?
Not that part, but
Okay.
if you want to make any appointments, yes, you do have to make a motion on that.
And just for clarification, everybody who submitted an application is named on this list, correct?
That is correct.
Good point. Good point.
Okay.
Entertain a motion.
I move to accept or appoint Robert Barton, Mark Gromolski, Klaus Hona, Tony Justice, Patricia Mayer, Don Miller, Elaine Redner, David Smith, and Tom Spoo to the Charter Review Committee.
Second.
All those, there's been a motion and a second to appoint the discussed folks to the Charter Review Committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes. Thank you. Next item on is a Budget Committee appointment. This is a request to appoint Molly Ossenbank to the Budget Committee to fulfill an open spot. Discussion?
I actually reached out to Molly and asked her if she would be willing to serve on this committee, and she said she would.
And she came from the compensation committee to this one, so.
Yep. I'll entertain a motion.
I move.
Oh, I moved to adopt BCC 2023-005.
Second?
It's been a motion and a second to adopt order number BCC 2023-005. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is supplemental budgets. Robert.
Good morning, Commissioners. Robert Paul, CFO. I believe this is a public hearing.
I'm sorry, yes. This is a public hearing on the supplemental budget.
I'll give a brief summary of the 14 supplemental budgets that are before you today. Budget Order 2023-59, Environmental Health On-Site Septic. The program requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in beginning cash of $78,000, an increase in local revenue of $13,000, an increase in personnel services of $35,800, and an increase in materials and services of $13,000, and an increase in contingency of $42,200.
Robert, real quick, let's stop. Could we scroll up the screen so we can see the orders? Thank you.
Next, Budget Order 2023-60, Environmental Health. The program requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires a decrease in beginning cash of $178,800, an increase in local revenue of $15,000, an increase in personnel services of $26,696, an increase in materials and services of $8,000, and a decrease in contingency of $179,496. Budget Order 2023-64, School-Based Health Center, requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in beginning cash of $83,000,
a decrease in state revenue of $42,000, an increase in federal revenue of $41,531, a decrease in personnel services of $1,423, a decrease in materials and services of $28,738, and an increase in contingency of $112,693. Budget Order 2023-65, School-Based Health Center Wellness Hubs, requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires a decrease in beginning cash of $51,500, an increase in state revenue of $205,551, a decrease in federal revenue of $32,000, an increase in personnel services of $177,677, an increase in materials and services of $76,000, and a decrease in contingency of $131,626. Budget Order 2023-67, Transportation, the STF program, requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in beginning cash of $16,000, a decrease in materials and services of $121,300, and an increase in contingency of $105,300. Budget Order 2023-68, Transportation STF program, STIF program, requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in beginning cash of $1,250,000, an increase in materials and services of $1,183,011, and an increase in contingency of $66,989. Budget Order 2023-69, Transportation STIF Discretionary Fund, requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in state revenue of $125,000 and an increase in materials and services of $125,000. Budget Order 2023-70, Transportation STIF Intercommunity Program, requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in state revenue of $524,653 and an increase in materials and services of $524,653. Budget Order 2023-71, General Fund Board of Commissioners, requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in federal revenue of $250,000 and an increase in materials and services of $250,000. Budget Order 2023-73, Foreclosed Property, requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in local revenue of $20,000 and an increase in materials and services of $20,000. Budget Order 2023-75, Human Services Mental Health Reserve, requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in local revenue of $200,000 and an increase in materials and services of $200,000. Budget Order 2023-78, County School Program, requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in local revenue of $75,000 and an increase in materials and services of $75,000. Budget Order 2023-80, Dispatch Reserve Program, requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in beginning cash of $48,700 and an increase in materials and services of $48,700. And Budget Order 2023-81, Stimulus Reserve, requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in federal revenue of $1 million and an increase in materials and services of $1 million. Those are the supplemental budgets before you today.
Thank you, Robert. Any comments? Close the public hearing. And for approval.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of Budget Order 2023-59.
Second, sorry.
There's been a motion and a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Move approval of Budget Order 2023-60.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move approval of Budget Order 2023-64.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Move approval of budget order 2023-65.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move approval of budget order 2023-67.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move approval of budget order 2023-68.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move approval of budget order 2023-69.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Move approval of budget order 2023-70.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move approval of budget order 2023-71.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move approval of budget order 2023-73.
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move approval of budget order 2023-75.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move approval of budget order 2023-78.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move approval of budget order 2023-80.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move approval of budget order 2023-81.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is budget transfers. Robert.
There are 4 budget transfers before you today. I'll summarize them. Budget Order 2023-72, General Fund Jail, requires a transfer of appropriation to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in capital outlay of $50,000 and a decrease in contingency of $50,000. Budget Order 2023-76, Community Corrections Program, requires a transfer of appropriation to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in a capital outlay of $70,000 and a decrease in contingency of $70,000. Budget Order 2023-77, Justice Reinvestment Program, requires a transfer of appropriation to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in capital outlay of $60,000, a decrease in contingency of $60,000. And Budget Order 2023-79, Community Service Development Program, requires a transfer of appropriation to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in materials and services of $50,000 and a decrease in contingency of $50,000.
Thank you, Robert.
Welcome.
Mr. Chair, I move approval for budget order 2023-72.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Move approval of budget order 2023-76.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye. Move approval of budget order 2023-77.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye. Move approval of budget order 2023-79.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Robert, did you want to take a chance to introduce your new person?
No, certainly. Newest addition to our team, Savannah Lane. She started yesterday.
Yeah.
So we're excited to get her on board and get her trained up, and she's fitting right in. So we're excited.
That's great to hear. Welcome,
Welcome.
Savannah,
Thank
again.
you.
Yeah.
Welcome to the family.
Yep. Thank you. That ends today's meeting. We're all done.